such a political environment, and you've seen now with the DA wanting to have a standoff and with the cabinet that is just being elected?
Well, we are overwhelmed already with the volume of work we have to contend with as the judiciary. We wish that going forward, all institutions, including our counterparts in the two political arms of the state, would make more use of structures and mechanisms available to them to resolve their disputes, because I believe, and so do my colleagues, that adequate provision has, as a matter of fact and law, been made for parliamentarians, members of the executive, political parties to resolve their differences without court intervention. But that said, it must have been precisely because of the realization that a need may well arise for courts to resolve some of the disputes that political actors might have, that there is no constitutional democracy without the judiciary. One is a motion of confidence in the judiciary that we doing what we're supposed to be doing and doing it fairly well. And two, I don't think it is something that the judiciary need to be particularly worried about. And I'll tell you why. For as long as we reconscientize ourselves at all times as the judiciary about the significance of the principle of separation of powers and resist the inclination or the urge or the temptation to intrude in the terrain of other arms of the state, and intrude only when it is necessary or unavoidable and obviously constitutionally permissible, then we will not have a problem. The difficulty will arise, though, if we were to get too carried away, too excited and say, well, we are the powerful ones here, we are in charge, and get involved even in circumstances where we ought not to get involved. We've got to know our space and respect the space constitutionally assigned to other arms of the state. When that obtains, when that continues to be the position, I don't think there will be a problem.
Over to you, sir, right at the end there, and then we'll come to you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Alvin St. Pierre from SABC TV News. I just have two questions. You raised the issue around the judicial independence of South Africa's judiciary, and this is something that the judiciary has been praised for time and time again. But then the problem then becomes when you have a situation where a court makes a certain ruling, puts down a certain order, and that order is not followed through with. Are you finding problems with that? And something that comes to mind right now is in the past, well, last year and this year now, with the SASA and Nkanda, sorry, not Nkanda, but the SASA and the IEC case, you almost find a situation where, for instance, the Constitutional Court is pushed into a corner where it has to make rulings that some would seem to be illegal or unconstitutional rulings, but for the benefit of South Africa to, as you called it before, to avoid a constitutional crisis. Is this a worrying thing?
Well, it needs to be stated categorically that the Constitutional Court has never made an illegal or unconstitutional ruling. It has to be appreciated that Section 172 of the Constitution confers on the Constitutional Court powers so wide that the ruling it made in the IEC matter and in the SASA matter falls squarely within the parameters of those wide remedial powers. We do not easily resort to that leg of the remedial powers that caters for exceptional circumstances, and we will not unless it is strictly necessary for us to do so. So we are comfortable in the manner in which we have handled matters that come before us. We know that the Constitution was designed to benefit the people of South Africa and to ensure that those who are responsible, those charged with the responsibility to secure our constitutional democracy, will always do whatever is necessary, whatever it takes to secure our constitutional democracy. And that's why, precisely in order to secure our constitutional democracy and avoid a constitutional crisis, we resorted to those extensive powers that we have in terms of Section 172 of the Constitution. That was our first question.
Sorry, the first question was around judicial independence, and while you have judicial independence, you have now another problem that seems to be coming up where court orders are either ignored or just not followed through with.
Well, as a matter of practice, court orders are observed. And this was heightened, particularly after our meeting of the 29th of August 2015, as the leadership of the executive and the leadership of the leadership of the judiciary and the leadership of the executive led by the president. Remember, we came up with points, and one of them related to the need for the executive to ensure at all times that they comply with court orders. So in any environment, there will be exceptions. I mean, we wouldn't be having a situation where the media occasionally have to post an apology if there were no exceptions. They post an apology under those exceptional circumstances where they were not able to follow the rules to the letter. Similarly, members of the executive are human beings, and so are members of parliament. They make mistakes. Sometimes they don't obey court orders or comply with court orders. But the beauty about the kind of constitutional democracy we have is that you don't flout the law, you don't flout court orders to the extreme without consequences. So where there has been an obvious determination to disregard court orders, consequences will, within the framework of the law, follow if it proves to be a necessary course of action to take.
News 24?
Louis Meiber from News 24. Just a question, query to the Chief Justice in relation to the break-in 2 weeks ago. The Justice mentioned that the Office of the Chief Justice is also, to a large extent, still in the dark about the break-in, as are we, but and just in light of the recent developments in terms of the arrests of some suspects who the police say are linked to the break-in, is the Chief Justice's office relieved and satisfied that these individuals who have obtained the sensitive information that they have now been apprehended and they will be brought to book? And just quickly, secondly, has any of the computers or other items stolen at the offices been retrieved and provided or given back to the office? Thank you.
Well, I can't say I'm relieved. They are only suspects, and nobody knows what is going to come out of their case. We haven't, let me not say we haven't been made aware of any computer that has been recovered. We really have no information that is any superior to the information that you have. So we're just in the dark, and we can't be relieved with what we know. There's nothing really.
Could you take it first, second, third?
Afternoon, I'm Marcella Spigana from Eyewitness News. I just wanted to follow up, Chief Justice, on what you just said about the burglary. What are your officers doing to beef up security if there obviously was a breach of it? And obviously you are concerned about this. My second question is regarding, it's just, you touched on this, the cabinet reshuffle and your views on it, your explicit views about, in 24 hours we have different ministers ruling and governing different portfolios now. Everything has changed and a lot of talk is going on about this. What is your view about what is going on in the country right now?
I don't know if there was breach of security, but what I can tell you is that additional to the security we have, the police are now also involved. We had an assurance in this room yesterday from General Masemola that they are now involved in ensuring that the place is secured. We had another round of briefing from I think 4 generals today in relation to their enthusiasm for ensuring that this building and courts and judges in general are secure. As for the cabinet reshuffle, it's a highly political issue, isn't it? And all I can say, coming from the arm of the state that bears the responsibility to guarantee our constitution, or our constitutional democracy, is that it appears that the president acted in terms of his constitutional powers. And I think that's as far as any judicial officer can go. He acted in terms of his judicial powers. We are observing. We are observing, and we can only observe. The news tell me that there's an application pending or being heard at the Western Cape High Court with a view to having the swearing in scheduled for some time this evening interdicted. We really can't comment on that. Who knows how far that application is going to go anyway. It may go all the way up to the Constitutional Court. But apart from that, I think it ill behooves any judge to begin to throw in one comment, either praising or criticizing those who make political decisions so highly sensitive, especially because of what appears to be all sorts of reactions to what has happened.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chief Justice. It's Judicial from SABC News. My question relates to the Nkandla ruling that you made last year. And there's a feeling from the EFF that maybe you didn't go far enough because they feel that your ruling with regards to the president, there were no disciplinary processes that were set in motion, and that's why they had come back to the court. Do you believe that you did go far enough, to make sure that there were processes that were instituted against the president for violating his oath of office?
Courts, in any case, work within certain parameters. The decision to be made by any court flows naturally from that which the parties themselves say they want the court to decide on. So anybody any lawyer in particular, but I dare say even those who are not lawyers, who read that judgment would find that it provides answers to all that the court was required to address. It would be unfortunate if a court goes way beyond, overzealously go way beyond what it has been required to determine. So we confined ourselves to what we were called upon to pronounce on at that time.
Colleague, you'll be next. I'm hoping you're going to ask questions about what the Chief Justice said here as well. Okay.
Chief Justice, thank you very much. Nani from Independent Media. My first question is to find out, you highlighted earlier on that you have major concerns, and I'm going to quote you here verbatim. You're saying that you also discussed matters around infrastructure, your infrastructure concerns. I want to find out on that. You said you reflected on infrastructure, beg your pardon. I want to find out on that because so many courts have been said to either have backlogs and they're not structurally sound, or certain things they're just not functional. Now I want to find out if you can give us steps, practical steps as to how the Chief of the Justice Office is going to handle those. And my second question to you is to find out in terms of the road accident fund claims, what would be the role of the Concord, because you have expressed your concerns, but we want to find out how do you intend tackling those. What practical steps or measures are you going to take? Thank you.
Let me start with the last question. Again, under the auspices of the National Efficiency Enhancement Committee, we discussed issues relating to the Road Accident Fund last year, or it could even have been year before. What we then agreed to was that the Road Accident Fund would do well to identify lawyers made available to them by the Law Society of South Africa, but also the General Council of the Bar, and some judges among us who were road accident practitioners before they became judges, to look into their challenges and say, this is what needs to be done. So that committee was set up. I think Judge Lehodis was chairing that committee, and came up with recommendations, some of which have been implemented. I had a briefing from the CEO of the Road Accident Fund and a team from the Road Accident Fund sometime, I think it was late last year, in relation to the progress made ever since the last meeting of the National Efficiency Enhancement Committee. Because part of the problem has been they lose a lot of money because even in circumstances where cases ought to have been settled, they don't settle, they wait until the day on which the matter is heard, paying lawyers all the way through, and on the day the matter is supposed to be heard, then they settle. It wastes the time of the court, because if we knew there was going to be a settlement, judges would have been allocated other work. But it also wastes the taxpayers' money, because you don't have to be paying lawyers in circumstances where it could have been avoided. Yesterday, part of the suggestion was, because there seems to be a lot of corruption in the system, it would do them a lot of good. That was the suggestion from the NEEC. If they were to identify one or a few senior counsel who are good in the practice of the law relating to road accidents, and have them identify the challenges and provide solutions to the challenges that they have. We are confident that that way, much of the wastage that is taking place in the Road Accident Fund would be curbed. Now, infrastructural challenges, we have set up a committee chaired by Judge President Lambo as the NEEC, And we took a decision at our last NEEC meeting, I think it was in last year, I think, that the provinces must also set up similar committees that deal exclusively with the infrastructural needs of the courts. If you look at, for instance, the Magistrates' Court in Pretoria, since it was burned down, it has taken rather too long for it to be operational again. I visited the court, I think it was 2-3 weeks ago, and I was disturbed to realize that though some work has started, it's rather too slow to enable the courts to be as functional, fully functional, as they ought to be. But happily, the magistracy there have been creative enough to find a way to dispose of cases notwithstanding the space challenge. 2, Rustenburg has been one of the problematic areas because of the delays occasioned by public works. Problems that I identified while I was still Judge President of the Northwest High Court so many years ago are still there until, and nothing much appears to have been done until the Department of Labor condemned the building and everybody had to be evacuated, go to Tlhabane, which is a small courtroom already, to get congested there. And the report I received yesterday from the cluster head is that backlog is unbelievable. Harankua near Pretoria is yet another problem, where caught with serious infrastructural challenges that were known for a long time, but Public Works has just not acted fast enough. When we went to officially open the Limpopo High Court last year, I discovered that there are a number of magistrates' courts there, including the one in Polokwane, the one in Mankwe, and a number of other areas that are not able to cope with the workload because there is no space, there's no courtroom space, there is no office space. And the Polokwane Magistrates Court, by the way, was burned down as well. When I visited Tata, I think it is last year or year before, I was shocked by the state of the court there. So there are a number of challenges. Because of the committee we have set up, as soon as we identify them, we prioritize them, and those that require urgent intervention are attended to as a matter of priority. That's what happened to both the Mthatha High Court and the Mthatha Magistrates Court when I went there, because I immediately had a discussion with the Minister of Justice, and the Public Works DG had an engagement with the Secretary General, and that was prioritized. In a very short space of time, it was given attention. Similarly, when I discovered the problems in Limpopo, because it emerged in my meeting with the Judge President of the Magistracy, I immediately said to the Minister, come, let's have a meeting now. And before we left, we had a meeting with the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Public Works officials, itemized the areas of needs, and established a committee that was going to prioritize those matters for attention. And from time to time, when I meet the Minister of Public Works, he has left, but I'm sure the ministry will have institutional memory. I said to him, your department is failing us. Please do something about it. And to the credit of the current Director General, he has really been very, very helpful ever since he was appointed.
Thank you, colleagues. Are there any other questions? I'll give you the last round. We have panel members that must fly to different provinces. Mr. Before, I'll come to you.
Chief Justice, apologies for returning to the break-in issue, but I'm sure your office can appreciate why there's such national interest and concern in the matter. I just wanted to know, given the high level of security we see at the building here, there's fingerprint access, there's cameras, CCTV cameras, which I understand do record 24/7. Could you possibly, or could your office divulge any information in terms of what you've been briefed on in terms of the crime? Where did the perpetrators, or alleged perpetrators, access the premises? Where did they enter the building, and how many individuals were filmed on these CCTV cameras?
Well, had I known the question would come, I would have discussed it with the SG. I can tell you, I've been briefed about the entry point, CCTV cameras, but I'm not too sure if it's not going to compromise the investigations to divulge that. From what the SG told me in her engagement with the investigating department, they said, please people, we know you have freedom of expression, but don't go about it in a manner that has the potential to compromise our investigations. So maybe I should pass that one.
Chief Justice, just to add on again, it's about the break-in. What happened at the time, I'm not sure if you recall, but it might have been separate incidents, but there was a judge basically that was held up at their house. I want to find out, at that point in time, had the meeting that you recently had, did you discuss at any point that judges around the country, and including yourself, need to ensure that they also basically have security measures around them? Were you worried about your security at any point?
Absolutely. In fact, security around judges and the magistracy, I must say, is one of the areas that I focused on as soon as I became Chief Justice. I discussed it more than once with the President. I discussed it at least once with the Deputy President. I discussed it with the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services and the Minister of Police. So I raised it again this morning with the team from SABC, from VIP Protection Services. I said to them, it needs to be fully appreciated by the police that the police can only do an investigation and the National Prosecuting Authority can only prosecute when dangerous criminals are involved. But the buck really stops with the judiciary. So if there is anybody who is exposed to a lot of risk, it is the judges. They determine the fate. I always listen with a lot of curiosity when they say, the NPA has managed to increase the conviction rate. They don't convict. How can you credit them with a conviction rate? They come and plead with us to convict. So the risk of being harmed lies primarily with judicial officers. 2, even matters involving tenders and other contracts that involves billions or millions of rands, which hurt and can harm the business prospects of entities or people, it is judges who make the final call. Now, when people are frustrated with the outcome, who do you think they are going to blame for their unpleasant situation? It is the judges. So if anybody needs to be secure, it is judges. I jokingly said to them, you see, instead of prioritizing security around the Minister of Health, it is just judges you must protect, because he provides people with Panados and all sorts of medication. They are happy. They are celebrating him. So I have continuously raised the matter with those that I need to raise it with, and I'll never stop doing so for as long as I'm Chief Justice. Because part of the problem is this: the judges' presidents are provided with static security. I beg your pardon, security in transit. When they drive around, they are. But then they get dropped off at home, all they have are CCTV cameras. I said, it's an illogicality from where I sit. If you have identified the need for them to be protected in transit, then it ought to extend to where they stay. When I was judge president, it was inside my house that I was hijacked. I just entered the premises, and people came and put a gun to my head and another one sitting next to me, and they took the vehicle. It wasn't in transit. So what is there to suggest that these heads of courts are not exposed to the same danger that I was exposed to when I was judge president?
Sure, Alvin again here from SABC. You just raised an interesting point now, and I wonder though if the judiciary feels at all that there's a need to educate the public around when it comes to issues of bail, because you find that the public come out when there's a person who's appearing before court, and when the court decides that bail is granted to the accused, they go on a rampage. They go on protest. And just a final question, just for clarity's sake, do you know which justice will be swearing in the ministers this evening, and will the justice have to wait up until the Western Cape makes a ruling?
I'm wondering which of the two I should start with. Maybe the last. I have delegated the authority to administer the oath to Justice Kampepe, and she knows the law. She will have to interpret it for herself as to whether she waits or goes ahead with the swearing in. I won't get involved in the assessment of what is it that is right to do under the circumstances, to wait or to go ahead. And two, you've touched on a very crucial point, the bail point. Incidentally, those colleagues who were here yesterday, like Judge President Komo and Judge President Leo, and Acting Judge President Musi, and I think Judge President Japi was there. At the meeting of the National Efficiency Enhancement Committee, we raised the issue. I raised the issue. I said, the police and all of us, including the organized professions, owe it to the criminal justice system and to the public to be more aggressive in educating them about the role that the institution of bail was established to play. Because there seems to be an assumption out there, or a belief out there, that bail is the commencement of serving the punishment that is due to you. So if you are granted bail, it's like you are being denied the obligation to serve your punishment that is already due to you. Two, I think political players and all leaders in society could also help a great deal if they were to help us educate the public about the significance of bail. Because quite often you find leaders involved in demonstrations outside of court and having placards saying no bail. Now, if leaders are doing that, the public can only remain with a conviction that indeed some of the people we say ought not to be granted bail should indeed not be granted bail. Let me tell you the danger that we were reflecting on yesterday in relation to this bail issue. Our correctional facilities are overcrowded. At times, I'm told to the point of 250% and 360%. I heard figures like that. Why is that so? It is because, one, even in circumstances where it is not necessary to detain people, we do. Because some leaders would be saying, go and arrest this person. A person in my neighborhood has complained that he or she has done this thing. Two, we refuse to caution people to come to trial or to grant them bail in circumstances where they are eminently qualified for bail, because we are afraid, some of us, of the consequences of granting them bail. Now, inmates are not able to receive the rehabilitation that they need. You have a problem of recidivism precisely because people are just too many for correctional services to be able to rehabilitate them and to offer them the training, to transfer skills to them that they could productively use upon release. And the result is the same people you release today are very likely to come back to prison, and the country now is exploding with people who are involved or who have criminal inclinations, because we are not allowing correctional services to correct, even in circumstances where there is a possibility to correct. And also, budgets of all departments across the board have been cut down. Correctional services simply doesn't have adequate resources to feed and clothe these people. I think we owe it to the nation, even as the media, to help educate people that bail is only intended to ensure that come the date for the hearing of your case, you present yourself, and also to ensure that there is no reasonable possibility of an accused person or a suspect interfering with witnesses or destroying evidence. That's it. It's not punishment.
Thank you, colleagues. Will you allow me to release the justices? Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you very much, good people. It's been a pleasure being with you.
Doesn't happen often, Chief Justice. Doesn't
Sorry?
happen often.
Chief Justice.
Well, we were together and you accused me of late coming, as if it was deliberate.
If you just 1 minute, then you can leave. Here.
Justice is 1 minute as well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Where are we going to be? Yeah. And by the way, 2 of our colleagues here are retired. The next time we have in fact, their replacements are being interviewed now. Judge President Komu and Judge President Sambo. Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, there's something with the Capes now. They are retired.